بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Alhamdulillah, today we will be starting our sixth dars. But before we do so, as usual, we will go over our recap of our last dars. So in our last dars, we went over cases for the father, known as halat for the father. So the father is either going to be a recipient of 1/6, he will receive either 1/6, and the scenarios we went over that in details last week. Either or the father will receive 1/6 plus residuary, so he will become 1/6 plus leftover asaba. He will become a asaba and get the leftover, or he will just be a asaba and receive complete mal. Like for example, someone passed away, like a mayyit passes away, and he leaves no one but the father, no one else but the father. Now, in that case, we went over the misal, the example that the father will receive the entire estate. Then we also went over some important masail relating to father case and as well as the paternity and all of its details. Following that, we also went over the cases for mother. So the mom will either receive 1/6 or she will receive 1/3 of entire estate, or the mother will receive 1/3 of leftover estate after spouse's share is deducted. So the difference between this 1/3 and this 1/3 is the factor is here is the spouse. So in the second scenario, once the spouse share has been deducted from the entire estate, then whatever remain of that 1/3 the mother will receive. And this is in a case where the mayyit, let's say Zaid, passes away. He leaves behind husband, mother, and father. Now the husband share will be deducted, and whatever remains from that, the share of the mother will be 1/3. Then the remaining will go to the father. Or Fatima passes away and she leaves behind husband. So I mean, if Zaid passes away, he left behind, wife. I'm sorry, I think I said it the opposite. So in that case, the mother will receive 1/3 of the leftover, and then the father will get the remaining. After that, a couple of masail, we also discussed those relating to the mother case, and we then went over the cases for grandfather, of which 3 cases for the grandfather are identical to the father, meaning the grandfather, in the absence of the father, will either receive 1/6, or the grandfather will receive 1/6 plus residuary, or the grandfather will become a complete asaba and will take everything. And remember, these 3 will be only in the absence of the father. So that's when the grandfather is identical in 3 halat with the father. Now, the 4th halat for the grandfather was that being that the grandfather becomes deprived in the presence of the father. So if the mayyit, let's say Zaid passes away, he leaves behind ab and jad. He leaves behind father and grandfather. In that case, the father will receive the share and the grandfather will become mahjub. He will become deprived. So these were some of the halat that we went over, and then we ended our last dars last week with the case for grandmother, and she has 2 cases: either she receives 1/6 or she's completely deprived. Inshallah, today we will begin our 4th and 5th category. So this is just to remind ourselves again. Last week we went over the father, mother, and category 3, and we went over the both grandmas and grandfather. Inshallah, in today's dars, we're going to go over daughter and paternal granddaughter. I know last week I said in the end that we were going to go over the daughter and full sister in my finishing note. But inshallah, that will wait till next dars. So today we're going to go over the halat in the case for daughter and paternal granddaughter, inshallah. So we begin our fourth female heir of the primary heirs, and from that category, it's just what is mentioned in the Qur'an. It's the daughter. Now, the daughter has three cases, and it's very simple. Daughter is actually one of the easier, warith to remember, following husband and wife. So daughter has three cases. So she will receive not 1 1/2. So these are just numbers. So she will receive 1/2. She will receive nisf in the presence of one daughter and no son. So no son is important. So she receives nisf when there is only one daughter and no son. And so the daughters will receive 2/3 in the presence of two or more daughters and no son. Again, there's no son, she will receive 1/3 if 1/2 if she's just single, and if there are two or more daughters for the mayyit, then they will receive 2/3. And the third halat for the daughter is that she becomes asaba. She becomes asaba in the presence of one or more sons. You see here in these above two cases, there's no son. As soon as the son is also in the equation, then she becomes asaba. And then so the son and the daughter, in this case right here in the third, they will inherit whatever remains at the ratio of 2 to 1. So the son will receive twice as much as the daughter. And again, why لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ? In the beginning dars, we went over some of the hikmas, why the male receives twice the share of the female, and all of those details were mentioned in the first and the second dars. So, we are not going to repeat that, but this is how it's going to be. So the equation will be set up in such a way. Now, rule number 10, we'll continue our rule numbers as well. So rule number 10 is that the daughter is never eliminated. However, she eliminates the maternal siblings. So if the bint comes, if it's just one or two or whatever the case is, she's never eliminated. But when her presence is there, she eliminates the maternal siblings. So I'll leave that up. If you want to take down notes or you just want to, memorize it. So 1/2, if it's 1, 2/3, if it's two or more daughters, and asaba or residuary, she becomes residuary. So she's no longer primary heir as soon as the son comes. So she becomes asaba. She will be transferred over to secondary, shareholder. So she becomes that in the presence of one or more sons. And then the ratio will be of 2 to 1. So for these halat, these right here, so what's going to happen on the next slide is, to follow along well, we're going to go over the halat for the half first, and then the 2/3, the examples will be followed, and then where the daughter becomes asaba and how does that affect. So halat number 1 for daughter is if a mayyat has one daughter, one bint, and no ibn, and no son. Then we just went over that the one daughter will get nisf. She will receive half. She will receive nisf. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that in the Qur'an, that وَإِن كَانَتْ وَاحِدَةً فَلَهَا النِّصْفُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and if there is only one female, then for her is half. For her is half, meaning of the estate. So فَلَهَا النِّصْفُ. And the example is also very simple. Let's say Zayd passes away. He leaves behind one bint and ab. So Zayd father, so meaning grandfather to this bint right here. So Zayd passes away, leaves behind one daughter and leaves behind father. father of Zayd. Now we just went over that if there is one daughter, she received nisf. She will receive 1/2. So we'll just remember that. Now we do remember from the father case that if father comes with one daughter or granddaughter, then the father will receive sudus plus residuary. So he won't receive just sudus. He will receive the second hala that we went over was sudus plus asaba. Now, in that case, first we look at this base number, how we came to the base number. So if the dad is supposed to receive sudus, so we already know that the base number will be 1/6. So if the dad is receiving 1/6, so the base number will be of 6 here. Now, of that 6, the daughter will receive 1/2. So will receive 3/6. And the father original share was here, sudus. So 1/6 is here. That's why the 1 you'll see here. Now we have allotted 3 plus 1. We've already distributed that. That leaves us with 2 remaining. And because when the dad comes with the daughter, the dad will receive sudus plus asaba. So the 2 is remaining here. That 2 will go to the father. So as a total, now 3 is granted to the daughter. 1 plus 2 is granted to the father. So, it will be 3 plus 3 equals 6, and that's what the total masala will be based on. That's the halat number 1 for daughter. Halat number 2 for daughter is if a mayyit has many daughters. The mayyit has banat, 2 or more, and again, no son, no ibn. Then those 2 daughters will share between them thuluthan. They will share 2/3 between them. And the example that we will go over is of Sa'ad radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Sa'ad ibn Rabi' radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So Sa'ad ibn Rabi' radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was a Sahabi who passed away during the battle of Uhud. When he passed away, what had happened was that he left behind 2 daughters. He left behind a wife. And so Sa'ad radiallahu ta'ala brother, he took the estate all to himself. Upon which the zawja of Sa'ad radiallahu ta'ala anhu, she complained, she went to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and complained that I have 2 daughters whom the father of whom is Sa'ad, and he passed away with you in a battle. And his brother, meaning the daughter's uncle, have taken everything, and I cannot get them married. And she complained of the situation. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked her to wait until the wahi came, and when the wahi came, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam informed Sa'ad radiallahu ta'ala anhu's brother that it's in a hadith that you'll see here. The dalil will first go over this. That أعطي لابنة سعد ثلثين وأعطي أمهما ثمنا وما بقي فهو لك. And this hadith is narrated in Tirmidhi and Abu Dawud. Now, the second dalil, obviously, for the 2/3 is from the Qur'an. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِن كُنَّ نِسَاءً فَوْقَ اثْنَتَيْنِ فَلَهُنَّ الثُّلُثَا مَا تَرَكَ. That and if they, meaning the children, are only females more than the 2 or only 2, then for them is 2/3 from whatever property is left by the deceased. So this is the dalil for that. Now we'll go back up top right here and solve the case. So if we remember, when we were finding the base number and how to determine a share, we went over group number 1 and group number 2, and we mentioned it again and again a few times. How to find that base number, or from where we distribute the shares, the amount of shares. So in there we had, under group 1 was 1/2, 1/4, and 1/8. Nisf, rubu', and thuman. And then in group 2 we had thuluthan, 2/3, 1/3, thuluth, and sudus, 1/6. And the rule was that if the thuman, all the way at the bottom from group 1, was to clash with group 2, all or one of the group 2, meaning with 2/3 or 1/3 or 1/6, then the base number or the masala will be made from 24. Similarly, if rubu' 1/4 clashes with all from group 2 or group, all or one from group 2, meaning 2/3, 1/3, and 1/6, then the base number would be 12. And 1/2 nisf, if that clashes with 2/3, 1/3, or 1/6, then the base number would have been 6. Now in this case, we have a thumun, so we have a 1/8. So clearly 1/8 is here, opposite of from group 2, 2/3. So it's not all of it. It's not 1/3 here in the equation as well, and 1/6 is not here, but only 2/3 is here. So when 1/8 clashes with one or all from group 2, then the masala will be made from 24, as we see up top here. So what happened? So we just went over here that if there are 2 or more daughters, then those daughters will share a thuluthan. They will share 2/3 of the entire estate. Now, the 2 daughters of Sa'd radiallahu ta'ala anhu, they will get a 2/3. So 2/3 of the 24 is 16. That's why we see the 16 here. And there are 2 daughters, so that's why you'll see 8 here and 8 here respectively. They will each get 8 shares of the 24. So between them is 16 share combined. Each daughter gets 8/24 and 8/24. Now that leaves us with Zawja. Zawja, the wife, is when there are children, she receives thumun, she receives 1/8. When there are no children, she receives 1/4. Now, as we see here, clearly she has 2 daughters here, so she's receiving 2/3 instead of 1/4. So 1/8 of 24 is 3. That's what you see, the 3 here. So 16 plus 3, that has already been granted and they are gone. So that equals 19 shares. That leaves us with 5 shares. And here we see the brother of Sa'd radiallahu ta'ala anhu, meaning the uncle to these daughters or chacha to these daughters, becomes asaba binafsihi and will receive leftover, because here Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said wama baqiya fahuwa lak, or wama baqiya lak. So أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. So whatever remains is for you. So now 19, when those 19 are subtracted from the 24, it leaves us with 5. That's why you'll see here the uncle will receive 5 here. I'll leave that up if you want to see the the numbers again and you want to read it over one more time. So 2 daughters, they will share thuluthan, and that's how the masla is made when we see a thumun, nisf, or rubu' clash with group 2 again. Then that's how the base number will be determined. Now, example 2 would be Zayd passes away. Now here he leaves behind 2 daughters. He leaves behind 2 daughters, and he leaves behind 1 brother. So here clearly they will be, so here we cannot find the other base number based on the group 1 and group 2 here, because the remaining here is the asaba. So now we, instead of that, we'll go with adad ru'us, meaning the quantity of recipients. So we will go with that. In this case is 3, 2 here and 1 uncle here, okay, or 1 brother to the deceased here. In other words, so here we already know the daughters receive sulusan. They will receive 2/3. So the total here is the total amount of recipients is 3. So they will receive 2/3 of the 3, which here you'll see is 2. And for each daughter is 1 and 1. So each daughter will get 1 and 1. Now that leaves us with leftover of only 1/3, 1/3. And that is what's granted to the or the uncle to these daughters and brother to the mayyit. So that's how the estate will be distributed if that was the scenario. Another example we'll see here, this one is a little interesting and it requires arrangements, or known as tashih. And tashih will be, inshallah, learning all of its details later on. It's very interesting and quite difficult, to be honest. So, bear with us. So, inshallah, as we see here, Zayd passes away, leaves behind now 3 daughters. Remember, 2 or more daughters, they will still receive thulusan. So they will still share 2/3 amongst them. And here is akh again. So now asaba binafsi. The case is very similar to this up top, but the only difference is 3 daughters now instead of 2 daughters. If that is the case, now it changes the whole equation again. So now we know they receive 2/3, and the total recipient here, if we see here, are for the 2, their allotted share is 2/3, and now the recipient under banat is 3. So we cannot equally give them an equal amount of share. If we, let's say up top, we give them 1/3 and 1/3, correct? So now if we were to give the same as we did up top, if we were to give that, 2 of them will receive that 1/3, while the uncle will receive that 1/3. That leaves us with a deficit of 1 recipient not being, allotted a share, not being able to get a share. So what is required here? You have to multiply, the 4 relations that we went over. This is how we are going to apply that now. So we have 3 daughters here. So what do? The total amount of share, as we see here, was supposed to be 3, as it was here. And then we times that by 3 daughters here. Then that gives us a total of 9 shares. Now, this method will allow us to equally distribute everything, between the 3 daughters and 1 brother of the deceased. Now, if we were to do that, we get a 9. 3 times 3, we get a 9. Now we come back here. The daughters are still getting thuluthan. They are getting thuluthan. They were supposed to get 2. Now you times that by 3. So you get a total of 6. And 6 is the 2/3 of 9. 6 is the 2/3 of 9. But this method, after acting upon it, allowed us to give each of the daughter an equal amount. So now we see here at the bottom, 2 plus 2 plus 2. 2/3 is given. Now that leaves us with leftover. Now, before this method right here, uncle was still getting the leftover, was still getting the 1/3. Here is the same thing. So now that is times by 3, and the uncle will get, the 1/3. So the 2/3 are still granted, and 1/3 is still granted to the uncle, or in this case, the leftover is still granted. But in terms of number, that's what it would fall to. So now we clearly see that it is equally distributed amongst the warasa in such a way that there isn't any, leftovers, or there aren't any, recipient not receiving their respective share. So I'll leave that up once again. 3 times 3, we're still finding solusan here. So we got that 6. Now in such a way, we couldn't do it for, we couldn't share 2/3 equally into 3 daughters. So we had to adopt another method. By doing that, we got to a number where we were able to accommodate everybody with an equal amount of share that they deserve. Hal number 3 that we went over was that if a mayyit has daughters or has 1 daughter, and at the same time the mayyit has a son or sons. Now we went over the third case for the daughter a couple slides back. If that is to happen, then the daughters will become asaba bil ghayr. They will become asaba bil ghayr. Now asaba bi ghayrihi, asaba bi nafsihi, and asaba ma'a ghayrihi, these are terms we have been using, but we have not gotten into details because to keep things simple. If we were to go into details right now, then that would be, a bit too much for us to, carry along. So inshallah, just remember the terms, and we will get to that very soon. So if that is the case, if 1 daughter is there or more daughters there, and 1 son is there with them or more sons, then the daughters will become asaba bil ghayr. And if that happens, But before that, the dalil for that is in the Quran in Surah An-Nisa, very beginning, that yusikumullahu fi awladikum lidhakari mithlu haddil unthayain. That Allah is directing you in regards to your children. So lidhakari mithlu haddil unthayain. So twice the share for the male, twice the share of male. I mean, for the male of female. So couple of notes. We'll go over two notes here very quickly. So in this hal number 3 right here, the son or the sons themselves stay as asaba binafsihi. They won't change. Now, of course, you guys are probably wondering that, you know, we don't even know what asaba binafsihi is, and, you know, bil ghayr or ma ghayr, but it's just something, you know, it's we will just keep that note as a reminder for ourselves. So they remain as asaba binafsihi, and whereas the daughter become asaba bil ghayb. Now, when counting, this is extremely important. Mithlu hadhil unthayn, right? So when counting, each son will be 2 heads and each daughter will be 1 head. So again, the daughters are receiving half of what the males are receiving, or the males are receiving twice as much as what the females are receiving, or, you know, or son, you know, receiving twice as much as the daughter receiving. So the point is, it's double. So we will never forget this point, because if we count them as singles, then, you know, we will never get to the correct answer and the correct way of distribution. So we will always remember that each son, if the son exists and the daughter exists in the equation, the son will always be counted as 2 heads, will be counted as double, whereas the daughter will be counted as single. That will allow us to understand and, you know, to solve the equation much better. So example here, let's say Zaid passes away, leaves behind bint and ibn. So it's 1 daughter and 1 ibn. So as you see here, if you look at it, right, is 1 son and 1 daughter. If you just look at the zahir, it seems like there's 2 people here, but the masala is made from 3. And the reason was just note number 2 that we just mentioned. The son will be counted as 2 and the daughter will be counted as 1. So 2 plus 1 equals 3, and that's why we see that 3 up there. And the daughter will receive, so she becomes asaba bighayrihi, she will receive leftover, or whatever the estate is left over between them, in you know, 2 to the ratio of 1. So the daughter will receive 1 and the son will receive twice the share of the daughter, in this case 2, and 2 plus 1 equals 3, as we see up top. So this is important when we go into bigger examples. These will be points to remember, because if we forget those, then, you know, it changes the whole masala altogether. Now, let's look at this. Fatima passes away. She leaves behind 2 daughters and 2 sons. Now, if we look at, again, Zahiran, seems like there's 4 children, correct? But if you see here, the masala is made from 6, and it is correct, because 2 sons, they equal 4 heads, and 2 daughters equals 2 heads. So 4 plus 2 equals 6. Now here, if the masala is 6, then they will be receiving, you know, 2 for, like, single for each one of them. So 1 plus 1. That leaves us with 4 for 2 sons, and it can be equally granted them, you know, or split between them equally. So each son will get 2 and 2. So as a whole, each son will get, you know, 2 shares, 2 shares, and between them and the daughters will get 1 share and 1 share. So 4 plus 2 equals 6, and that's what the masala will be made from. You know, let's say the father had passed away years ago, it's only the mother, and she has, you know, 2 daughters and 2 sons, and now the mother passed away. So, you know, like Fatima, mother to these children, and she left behind these children. That's how the estate will be distributed. Another masla, let's say Zaid passes away, leaves behind 3 sons and leaves behind 2 daughters. So again, we see that 3 plus 2, technically, like looking at it, Zahiran is 5 children. But again, the masla is made from 8, and this is just to clarify again, each son is counted as 2. That's why we see 3 times, the number 2 here. So 3 sons, together collectively, there are 6 shareholders right here. And each son is granted 2 shares. And 2 daughters, collectively, they have 2 shares together, and each is granted 1. So 6 right here plus 1 and 1 right here equals 8. And that's how the estate will be distributed. If Zayd leaves behind, let's say, or person leaves behind 3 sons and 2 daughters, whatever the number will be, we just need to remember that ibn, son, will be counted as 2, and daughter will be counted as 1. So that's how we will remember that. Now this is a little difficult masala. I could have waited to bring this masala, but I decided to bring this, just so, we can get an idea of what happens. So again, we look here. Zayd passes away, leaves behind 2 daughters, and leaves behind 3 sons, right? And now here, the daughter, the wife, and Zayd also leaves behind Zoja, leaves behind a wife. Now we know that when there are children, the wife receives 1/8, not 1/4, but she receives 1/8, as it should have been the case here for her getting 1/8. But when we come to this, we find out that 3 sons times 2 head each, right, equals 6, and plus 2 for single daughters. So we have a total of basically 8 recipients or 8 shares, between them to count. So just remember that point. And now from that 8, let's say thuman, right? So the wife is getting 1/8. This is a little lengthy masala. The wife is getting 1/8. If we grant her that 1/8, that leaves us with 7, as you will see here. So that leaves us with 7/8. But the issue now comes, again, we cannot, distribute 7/8 equally between 3 sons and 2 daughters, because they equal 8 shareholders or 8 shares, between them. So we have a problem now. This is similar to that masala that we did 3 times 3 in a couple slides back, where we got a total of 9. So very identical to that. So what do we do here? We times these 8 right here, 2 plus 3 times 2 here, 6. 6 shares between the 3 sons and 2 shares between the 2 daughters. So 6 plus 2 equals 8. We take that 8 right here, we times that by the aslul masala. It should have been from the 8, because the wife is receiving 1/8. So that base number of that 8th in that in the fraction is right here. So it should have been 8, correct? Because we had a remainder of 7/8. So we take that 8 and we times that by the aslul masala of 8, and we get a number of 64. Now this method or this arrangement again is called tashih, as you'll see here. And there are types of tashih and all of this. We're not getting to any details right now or which type this tashih is called. So we will times that and we get a 64. Now 64 is a number which allow us to equally share and distribute to each recipient equally to their respective amount. So now, instead of giving 1/8 of the 8 to the wife, we will give 1/8 of 64 to the wife, which is basically 8 shares for her, as you will see here. So now we subtract this 8 from this 64, we get a total of 56. As you will see here, we have a 56. Now what happens is we have basically 8 people or 8 shares between these 2 groups right here, and we have originally we had 7, right? So now we will divide that. We will divide that asl by it, and we will each we'll divide that by 8, and we will get 7 for each. So if we do that, meaning if we divide this 56 by 8, we get a 7. Now each daughter will receive 7 share. because they'll be counted as singles. So between the two daughters, they get 14 shares. And when we come to the sons, they will get twice as much shares for the of the banat, of the daughters. So each son will get 14, 14, and 14. Amongst them collectively is 42. 42 plus 14 equals 56 right here, as we see here again, and plus the 1/8 of that 64. So remember, this will be, in other words, 42 over 64 is granted for the three sons, and 14 over 64 for the two daughters, and 8 over 64 for the zawja. And if we add all of these three numbers together, we get a 64, and that's what the whole masala was made from. 14 plus 42 equals 56, plus 8 equals 64. And that's what we see here is 64. And if we do that arrangement and we do that tasheeh, then we are able to distribute the share, in such a way that everybody receives whatever they deserve equally, and we don't have any issues in finding the numbers. A couple of masail we'll go over. So the children of non-Muslim couples, a couple is considered legitimate if the one or both of the parents were to accept Islam. Then the children who are not baligh, will inherit from the Muslim parent, or both of them then parents. Another masala, these are very simple masalas, but it's something to keep in our mind. If one of the couple accepts Islam, then inheritance will only take place between him and her and the non-baligh children. Another masala is, if the non-baligh children outrightly denies being a Muslim, then there will be no inheritance between them. See, non-baligh, he denies being a Muslim. Here is granted here because we mentioned a masala way back, when we were discussing the masail for husband and wife, that if one of the parent accepts Islam, the non-baligh children, they will follow the deen of the Muslim parent, whichever it may be. So if they deny it, then when that denial is clear, then there is no need for inheritance to be there, because clearly they no longer are under that they will be following their Muslim parent. So the inheritance will not take place between them. Another masala to remember is that if, however, the children are baligh, their Islam, this is a condition, their Islam must be verified and confirmed in order for inheritance between them and their parents to be valid. So this is a condition, that their Islam must be verified. If it is not, they are not Muslim or any other scenario, then obviously the answer to that is the inheritance will not take place between them. As it is important that the deen must be the same. This is also a very important masala. When we were discussing all the basis of the laws of inheritance and this concept of inheritance way in the beginning, we mentioned that this just system of inheritance is based on the wahy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the mi'yar that is set for it is based on qarabat, is based on kinship. So as a result, adopted and fostered children are not eligible heirs. We mentioned that way back in the early dars as well, that they will not be eligible heirs. And then last masala that we may see a lot in our lives, or maybe we've seen it, an unborn child is eligible to inherit once born alive, as long as it can be confirmed that the pregnancy existed at the time of demise. So, a lot of times they're like, oh, some of the warisin or some of the family members may bring this up, that, oh, he was not born. So if it's not born, then therefore not a valid recipient. And then they want to share, split the estate, excluding this unborn child. So the masala is that he's still entitled, he's still eligible to receive, as long as the pregnancy is confirmed and the baby is born alive. So that's also another condition. So these are certain conditions within this masala, that when these conditions are met, then this unborn child is also eligible and is entitled to receive the share whatever, his father left behind. So someone messaged me actually that why are we not mentioning the son when we are mentioning the daughter? So I thought to bring this up before mentioning all of the asaba. Normally, I would have brought this up a little bit later when we were discussing the residuary or the secondary heirs. But just to understand this, that son is not from amongst the primary heirs. Rather, he is a secondary or residuary heir. He's from amongst the asaba term that we are continuously using. So, however, he always receives a share from the estate, which means that he is like a primary heir without a fixed share. And primary heirs are those whom have a fixed share from the Qur'an. Now, he is like them, but he is without a fixed share. So after shares have been distributed to primary heirs, the son receives all the residue, and no one receives residuary inheritance in the presence of the son. So this is very important. When the son is there, no one else receives the asaba or the residuary inheritance. So all of the one that we saw, like where Zayd radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he had 2 daughters and he had a wife and he had a brother. The son was not there. So if the son and the brother were there, then the scenario would have changed. So each small little detail changes everything. But this is just so remember. So from the residuary heirs, when the son is there, no one else will receive it, and the son is the only guaranteed residuary heir. So the son, plays an important role in the equation when he's there. But inshallah, when we get to that, more details of it will be shared. So rule number 11, the son is never eliminated. However, he eliminates the following. A, he eliminates grandchildren. He eliminates, B, he eliminates siblings and all their offsprings. And C, he eliminates uncles and their offsprings. So he eliminates, in that case, let's say, of Zayd radiallahu ta'ala anhu, right? If that brother was there for Zayd radiallahu ta'ala anhu and the son had existed, then that brother, would have been deprived. And their offsprings, so like Batija, like what we call in Urdu, right? Batija will also be deprived when the son is there. And as well as uncles and their offsprings. So like cousins will also be deprived and uncles will also be deprived if the son exists. So that leaves us, that completes our 4th female primary heir. Inshallah, now we'll begin the 5th category and as well as the 5th primary heir of the primary heirs. So, or the 5th female heir, excuse me. So the 5th category we mentioned in the chart in the beginning was grandchildren, and under there we said we will mention paternal granddaughter. Inshallah, the 6th category will be for the next dars. So paternal granddaughter from the son of the deceased. Now, وَإِن سَفُلَ, however low in the hierarchy. So, granddaughter, we don't, honestly, nowadays, it's very rare to see all the way down, to grandsons, granddaughter's daughter, all the way down. So it's very rare, but it can exist. So, and the granddaughter, so this is, in Urdu, we call this poti, granddaughter. So son's daughter. However, Nawasi, or the granddaughter from the daughter of the deceased, belongs to the 3rd category. Remember, we're only doing the 1st category, primary heirs. So your daughter's daughter will belong to the 3rd category, Dawul Arham, and not to the primary heir, Ashabul Faraid. Only the granddaughter from the son's daughter is belonging to this category. So let's not forget that, and we'll just so remember. And the granddaughter will only inherit, this is also important, the granddaughter will only inherit in the absence of the son. So when the son exists, then obviously, his daughter will not be entitled to receive a share because, basically, her father. So the son is existing. So to the mayyit, this is the paternal granddaughter, but to the mayyit, the son is existing, then that eliminates the paternal granddaughter. Hopefully that didn't confuse you too much, but it's very simple. So the granddaughter is a little bit confusing when it comes to the distribution. Let's say the son does not exist. Okay, so in the presence of one daughter, she will receive 1/2. It's very identical to the daughters. Now, 2/3 in the presence of 2 or more granddaughters. Let's say there are 2 or more granddaughters, they will receive 2/3. Now remember this note, this is very important. So the 2 above cases will only exist in the absence of daughter. So here, 1/2, 1 and 2/3, these are very large share and very identical to of the daughters, if we remember the daughter cases that we just went over in the beginning of our dars today. Now, when the daughter comes, it changes. So 1/6 in the presence of one daughter. So when one daughter comes with the granddaughter, it changes the equation again. So now, instead of 1/2 here, with the presence of one daughter, she's now dropped all the way down to 1/6. And if 2 daughters are present, remember, 1 daughter, 1/6. Now, if 2 daughters are present, then the granddaughter will be deprived of any inheritance. So she becomes mahrum when 2 daughters exist. Let's say Zayd passes away, leaves behind 2 daughters, and leaves behind just a granddaughter. Now, son's daughter, the son had passed away years ago or something, So the son daughter exists. Now, because of the existence of those 2 daughters to Zayd, what happens? This granddaughter will be completely deprived. Or, again, the granddaughter will be deprived again in the presence of son. So she will be deprived, as mentioned in the previous slide as well. So when the son doesn't exist and the 2 daughters don't exist, then she will be entitled to receiving some sort of a share from the estate. Now, the last case for the granddaughter is if, however, in the presence of 2 or more daughters, remember, 2 or more daughters, she would have been deprived, correct? But, there is a paternal grandson as well. So meaning her brother, basically, or however low in the hierarchy, right? Then the granddaughter will become asaba. So this will be the turning point. And when with this granddaughter exists a grandson, then she becomes asaba. So they, meaning the grandson and the granddaughter, will inherit what remains on the ratio of 2:1. So grandson again will receive twice the share of one granddaughter. And this will change the equation altogether again. So instead of making her completely deprived, her share is shifted from being eliminated completely with the existence of this grandson. Now it will be the ratio of 2:1. I'll leave that up. This one's a little bit confusing and a little lengthy, but this is just to make things easy. If the son exists, then she's not receiving anything. If 2 daughters exist, she's not receiving anything. If 1 daughter exists, she receives 1/6. So otherwise she gets 2 identical shares. If there are no daughters and just granddaughters, so she will get those big chunks of the estate. Whereas here, she would have been 2/3. She would have been, completely deprived. But now with the paternal grandson, it changed the equation again. So it will be the ratio of 2:1. So 2 important points. We'll go over the first type or the first point, something called blessed brother. So I know it's a weird term, but it's something to remember. He is that brother. If not for him, his sister would not inherit. The example for that is a person dies, leaving behind 2 daughters and a granddaughter and grandson. So in this case, the grandson is the blessed brother. In his absence, his sister would not have inherited. We just went over the halat of the granddaughter that if exists 2 daughters and a granddaughter exists with them alone, she becomes mahrum, she becomes deprived, she becomes mahjub. Now what happens because of this existence of this grandson? It changed the equation. So 2 to with the ratio of 2 to 1. So because of this grandson, now she is allotted a share. So that's why this brother or this grandson here is the brother of this granddaughter, basically called blessed brother. Now another point, or another point, key point to remember, is another type of brother known as wretched brother. He is that brother, due to his presence, his sister will not inherit. Example, a person dies leaving behind a husband, leaving behind mother, leaving behind father, leaving behind daughter, granddaughter, and grandson. So in this case, the grandson is the wretched brother, as in his absence, his sister would have inherited. So in his absence, right here, in this grandson absence, this granddaughter would have inherited. Why? Because she's coming with one daughter in the equation. If you see here, the husband is there, mother is there, father is there. So the daughter is there. The husband will be getting, on top of my head, let's just go over this. The husband will be getting, 1/4, because the children exist. So 1/4 here, and the mother would have gotten 1/6, father would have gotten 1/6, and the daughter here would have gotten, her share, and the granddaughter here would have, the point here to make is to, she would have received 1/6 because she's coming here with one daughter. But because this grandson came as well, it eliminated, or it made this granddaughter mahjub and disqualified her from getting this share. So in this case, the grandson is the wretched brother, as in his absence, his sister would have inherited. Hopefully this thing didn't confuse you guys too much, but this is an important factor to look at when it comes to grandchildren. So when this grandson exists, it will be one of the two scenarios. Either he allows this granddaughter to get the share, or his presence basically deprives the granddaughter of her share. So hopefully that made sense. And rule number 12 is the granddaughter eliminates all the maternal siblings. And inshallah, the maternal siblings will be going over that in our next dars. And rule number 13, the grandson is eliminated in the presence of the son and may inherit in his absence. So the grandson I'm talking about, not the granddaughters. The grandson is eliminated in the presence of the son. We went over, when we were discussing the detail of the son a couple slides back, that when son exists, he eliminates grandchildren. So both of them. So when that happens, grandchildren here, but specifically here, grandson is eliminated in the presence of the son. Inshallah, with this, we wrap our dars up today. If you have any questions, please email us at questionsfordarulquranfoundation@gmail.com. And inshallah, in our next dars, we will discuss the last category of the primary heirs, meaning all the siblings. So full sisters, paternal sister, a maternal sister, and as well as the last male heir of the primary heirs, which is maternal brother, that we haven't mentioned yet. So all those siblings, inshallah, we will try to cover them if the time allowed us, all 4 of them. Otherwise, we will try to cover as much as we can. And inshallah, we will also go over the summary of the entire primary heirs, just on one slide, with just a reminder to refresh everything that we have learned in all of the previous dars. So inshallah, it will be refreshed in our minds. هذا وبالله التوفيق. جزاكم الله خير. Inshallah, with this we will end our dars today. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.